The Wendigo. In the depths of the dense northern forests of Canada, far from civilization, the wind howled with an eerie intensity. The trees stood tall and ancient, their gnarled branches reaching like twisted fingers towards the darkened sky. The place was known as the Frostbite Woods, named for the bitter cold that lingered year-round. For generations, locals had whispered about the things that stalked those woods, things that were not human. The most terrifying of all was the Wendigo. It was late October when a small group of 4 friends set out to hike the Frostbite Woods. College students from the city, they sought adventure, thrills, and the chance to escape the mundane. Sarah, Mark, and Jake were experienced hikers, while Anna, a friend of Sarah's, was new to the outdoors. The group was close, bonded by years of friendship and shared interests, and they had made plans to hike the remote trail, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. They arrived at the trailhead late in the afternoon, just as the sun was dipping beneath the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow-covered ground. The weather forecast had predicted clear skies, but there was an unseasonably sharp chill in the air. Sarah, always the leader of the group, glanced at the map before turning to her friends. "This is it," she said, her voice carrying a note of excitement. "We'll make camp about halfway through and then push on to the clearing tomorrow." Jake, a self-proclaimed survival expert, was already testing his gear, while Anna, shivering, pulled her jacket tighter around her. Mark, a little more cautious, raised an eyebrow at the thick forest that stretched before them. "I don't know, guys," he said, "this place feels off. It's too quiet." Sarah laughed, brushing off his concerns. "It's just the isolation. We're in the middle of nowhere." They began their hike, the soft crunch of snow beneath their boots the only sound breaking the eerie silence. The forest, usually full of the chatter of wildlife, seemed lifeless. Not a bird, not a rustle of branches. The wind whipped through the trees, howling like a mournful cry. By dusk, the light was fading fast, and the forest grew darker with each step. They had been walking for hours, and though they were tired, the unsettling atmosphere kept them on edge. As they reached a clearing, they decided it was time to set up camp. A fire crackled to life, and the warmth of the flames did little to dispel the oppressive cold that had settled into their bones. As they gathered around the fire, Sarah pulled out a small thermos of hot chocolate. "You know," she said with a smile, "this place is kind of famous. The locals have all sorts of stories about it." Anna looked at her, curious. "What kind of stories?" "The usual stuff, ghosts, curses, strange creatures that live in the woods. But the scariest story is about the Wendigo." Mark's face twisted into a skeptical grin. "Oh, come on, a Wendigo? That's just folklore." "Maybe," Sarah said, her voice lowering slightly, "but the legend goes that the Wendigo is a spirit that inhabits the forest. It's said to be the spirit of a person who resorted to cannibalism to survive when trapped in the woods. But the act of eating another human being turns them into a monster, a creature with an insatiable hunger for flesh. It's said that they stalk the woods, always hungry, always searching for the next victim." The fire crackled, and the night seemed to grow even colder as Sarah continued. "Some people say that the Wendigo is a warning, a reminder of the dangers of losing one's humanity." Mark chuckled nervously, though there was a hint of unease in his voice. "That's just a myth, right? Nothing to worry about." Jake shrugged, trying to mask his discomfort. "I've heard of the Wendigo, too, but I think it's just a story to keep people from wandering too deep into the woods. People get lost, and they want something to blame." The group sat in silence for a while, the only sound the wind as it whispered through the trees. But as the night wore on, a strange feeling crept over them. The darkness seemed thicker here, more oppressive, as if something was watching from just beyond the edge of the firelight. Anna, sitting next to Sarah, suddenly shivered. "Do you hear that?" The others looked up, listening intently. At first, there was nothing. Then, faintly, they heard it, a low, guttural growl, deep and resonant, carried on the wind. The sound sent a chill through Anna's spine. "What the hell was that?" she whispered. Jake stood, brushing snow from his pants. "It's probably just a bear or something. We're in their territory." But Mark wasn't so sure. That didn't sound like a bear. It was too low, too unnatural. For a moment, the group sat in tense silence, the air thick with unease. Then, just as quickly as it had come, the sound faded into the distance. Sarah gave a nervous laugh. "It's probably just a trick of the wind," she said, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. The night passed uneventfully, but none of them slept well. The forest seemed alive, the wind carrying faint whispers that sounded almost like voices. By morning, the sun was hidden behind thick clouds, casting a gray pall over the landscape. They packed up camp and continued their hike, the weight of the previous night's events hanging over them. But as they pushed further into the forest, the sense of unease only deepened. The trees here were older, their trunks thick and twisted, and the path grew narrower, more treacherous. It was Anna who noticed it first, a trail of fresh footprints in the snow, too large to be from any animal they knew. The tracks were deep and wide, the shape of them unmistakably human. "Guys, look at this," Anna said, pointing to the prints. Sarah knelt beside the tracks, studying them. "Those aren't ours," she said, her voice tense. Mark's eyes darted nervously toward the forest. "This isn't right, we should turn back." Jake, however, was eager to press on. "Maybe it's someone else hiking the trail. Let's just keep going. We're almost to the clearing." But something in the air had changed. The wind had stopped, and the silence that enveloped the woods was suffocating. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. And then, just as the trees parted and the clearing came into view, they saw it. In the distance, standing near the edge of the woods, was a figure, tall, impossibly thin, with skin stretched tight over its bones. Its face was gaunt, with hollow eyes and a mouth stretched into a grotesque, predatory grin. The creature's limbs seemed too long, too twisted, as if it were not meant to be human. For a moment, no one moved, and then, the Wendigo's mouth opened, releasing a scream that split the air, a sound that was both human and inhuman. The friends turned and ran, hearts pounding in their chests. But the Wendigo was faster. It moved through the trees like a shadow, its hunger driving it forward, relentless. One by one, it took them Mark, Jake, Anna, until only Sarah was left. She stumbled through the forest, her legs heavy with exhaustion, her mind consumed with terror. Finally, she reached the clearing, the Wendigo hot on her heels. She collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. As she looked up, the Wendigo loomed over her, its eyes filled with hunger, and as the darkness closed in, Sarah realized too late that the creature had been waiting for them all along.